Okay, now we're going to look at subtracting polynomials, which obviously is just slightly different than adding polynomials. Okay, we'll look at the vertical method and the horizontal method here. You can choose which method you actually like better. To be perfectly honest, I like the horizontal method better, but it's important to know the vertical method as well, especially for the next thing that we're learning. So let's take a quick look at how we can do this. So the first things first, let's just go ahead and maybe write out our first one in standard form. Okay, it looks like it's actually already in standard form for us, but I'm just going to copy it down anyways. So this is now negative 2x cubed plus 5x squared minus x plus 8. Okay, so we go from degree of 3 to 2 to 1 to 0, which is great. Now I'm just going to write this as a subtraction problem vertically, so I'm just going to write minus in red, okay, and I'm going to write the next polynomial in blue. Okay, so now this is negative 2x cubed. I have no x squared term, so I'm going to write plus 0x squared. My x term is a positive 3x, and then my constant term is a negative 4. Okay, and so ideally, it's kind of like addition. We would just go right here and we'd add these up and we'd be good to go. All right, now subtraction is a little bit different than addition, right? So subtraction is adding the opposite, right? So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of change this problem a little bit, because we know subtraction is the same thing as adding the opposite. Okay, and so when I change this problem, a couple things are going to change, right? So I'm going to instead write this, the green thing's not changing, right? So negative 2x cubed plus 5x squared minus x plus 8, okay? But now instead of minus in red, I'm going to add, and now in blue I'm going to write the opposite of everything, right? So now instead of writing negative 2x cubed, I'm going to write a positive 2x cubed, right? And instead of 0x squared, I'm just going to write, well, in this case it doesn't really matter, right? 0x squared is fine, right? So I'll write plus 0x squared. Okay, instead of writing a positive 3x, I'll write a negative 3x. And then instead of writing a negative 4, I'll write a positive 4. So now I can treat this just like our addition before. I'll add all the columns separately, so I know that negative 2x cubed plus 2x cubed actually just gives you 0, right? So I could write 0 here, but in fact I'm just not going to write anything. Okay, now I have 5x squared plus 0x squared will just give me 5x squared. Okay, I now have a negative x plus another negative 3x is going to give me negative 4x. Okay, and then finally on this last one, I know that 8 plus 4 gives me 12. And so this is my final answer. It's a polynomial in standard form. In fact, it's a trinomial with a degree of 2, so we know it's quadratic. All right, let's look at another example here. Okay, so looking at the second one, let's do this one vertically again. Okay, so vertically on this particular one, let's just go ahead and maybe stay consistent here. I'll call this my green polynomial. And so I'm just going to write this as x squared. I have no x term, so I'm just going to write plus 0x. And then I have a negative 8, so I'm just going to write minus 8. Okay, I'll go ahead and write my minus sign. And then I'll call this my blue polynomial. So I have now a 7x, so I'll write the 7x right here in the x column. And then finally I have a positive 4x squared. So actually I got to go back and write positive 4x squared. So I almost made a mistake there, but luckily I caught it. Okay. There's no constant term in the second one there, so we're good to go. Now, ideally, in addition, we would just be able to add these up and we'd be good to go. But remember that subtraction is the same thing as adding the opposite. So we're going to add the opposite. Okay? And so what we get here when we add the opposite, the green polynomial, we're just going to write the exact same. So it's going to be x squared plus 0x minus 8. Now instead of a minus sign, I'm going to write a plus sign. And my blue one now turns into a negative 4x squared minus 7x, and then nothing else. Okay, so now I just have to add up my columns. I end up getting negative 3x squared, because remember this is a coefficient of 1, so it's like what's 1 plus a negative 4. Okay, I then have 0x minus 7x is just going to be a negative 7x. And then finally, this negative 8 is just going to kind of carry down here. And that is my final answer. It's a trinomial. The degree is 2, and it's quadratic. Okay? Let's look at one last one, but we're going to approach this one just a little bit differently here. Okay? Let me go ahead and extend this a little bit. Okay? This last one I'm going to just approach a little bit differently. So all I'm going to do on this particular one is I'm going to distribute this negative sign, this negative. I'm going to distribute it to each term here in this set of parentheses, or in this grouping. Okay? And so all I'm going to do really is just copy this first one. So I'm going to write 3x squared minus 5x plus 3. It's already in standard form for us, actually. Okay? And then when I distribute here, I have negative 1 times 2x squared is going to give us a negative 2x squared. Right? Then negative 1 times a negative x will give us a positive x. And then finally, negative 1 times negative 4 is just going to give us a positive 4. So we see that the only things that actually really change are the signs. Okay? And so now, all I'm going to do is combine my like terms. So I have a 3x squared minus 2x squared is going to give us 1x squared. In other words, we just write x squared. Now I'll go to my x terms. Right? I have now a negative 5x and a positive 1x, remember. And so that's going to give us a negative 4x. Okay? And then finally, this last thing here, I have a positive 3 and a positive 4 will give us a positive 7. Okay? So again, notice we took a little bit different strategy on that one, but we really got the same result. We got the correct answer and everything. Okay? I hope these examples are helpful. I hope the speed at which I'm going is not too slow and not too fast. But remember to make sure that you take a look at your homework problems and practice this stuff to make sure that you're doing it correctly.